just a little while longer. Hold on, just a little while longer. Everything's gonna be alright. Hold on, just a little while longer. Hold on, just a little while longer. Hold on, just a little while longer. Everything's gonna be alright. Pray on, just a little while longer. Pray on, just a little while longer. Pray on, just a little while longer. Everything's gonna be alright. Sing on, just a little while longer. Sing on, just a little while longer. Sing on, just a little while longer. Everything's gonna be alright. Hold on, just a little while longer. Hold on, just a little while longer. Hold on, just a little while longer. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright.
Friends, today I stand before you to reflect on our history and the values that guide us as a community. Our story as a congregation begins in 1632, when our first meeting house was constructed near what is now the corner of Dunster and Mount Auburn Street. The following year, our first minister, Thomas Hooker, arrived. And when we refer to ourselves as the first parish, we honor this foundational moment in our history. Our ancestors in this faith were the first European settlers on this land. Last June, along with Nina Lytton and Julie Duncan, I participated in the 2024 Faith and Land-Based Upstander Academy, a week-long immersive learning experience designed to deepen our understanding of the history and current realities of the original people in what we now call Cambridge. One of the important takeaways for me was learning that when we tell our congregation's origin stories solely from the perspective of our colonizer founders, we perpetuate what Native people call twistery. I'll briefly share a couple of undertold stories that illustrate our place in this painful and brutal history. In 1636, Hooker led his congregation to Connecticut, resulting in violent conflict with the Pequot people as his group seized their lands and established Hartford. Although Thomas Hooker is often celebrated as the founder of Hartford, it's crucial to remember that his actions and those of his followers led to the tragic genocide of the Pequot people. Fast forward to 1755, Lieutenant Governor Phipps, an esteemed member of our congregation, signed a law incentivizing settlers to hunt, capture, kill, and scalp Indigenous people for cash and land rewards. Lois Markham will be sharing a little bit more about that story in a bit. Settler colonialism is embedded deeply in our history. Recognizing this painful truth is essential for our growth and healing as a community. It's tempting to selectively remember only those aspects of our past that align with our current values. However, as UUs, we need to look beyond the whitewashed versions of our history and confront its entirety. Our core values of interdependence, pluralism, justice, transformation, generosity, and equity demand that we acknowledge the mistakes of our ancestors and also learn from them, and strive for a more inclusive and just future. This process requires courage, empathy, and a shared commitment to change. I love it when we share more inclusive historical narratives. Reflecting on a fuller story of our past helps me see our role in the systemic injustices that persist today. And by sharing this complete story and embracing its lessons, I'm confident that we can build genuine connections within our congregation and our community and honor voices that have been historically marginalized and silenced and grow the community that we dream about. As we move forward, let us commit to being active participants in this ongoing journey of decolonizing our history. Today, we can create a more inclusive and compassionate narrative, one that realizes the full promise of our UU faith and contributes to the healing and restoration of our relationships with Native peoples, where we work together to build a shared and better future.
Good morning. When I think about my family history, I am prone to dwell on the 3/4 of my ancestry that is Irish. One branch of them came to the US during the 1840s potato famine, a kind of genocide perpetrated against the Irish by the English ruling class. I'm much more comfortable in the victim role than in the perpetrator role. But if I am to be honest with myself, I must acknowledge that 1/4 of my family arrived in Gloucester in the 1600s. Whose land did they take for their homes? Did they commit active violence against the Indigenous people they encountered? I'll probably never know for sure, but it is not unrealistic to think so. 2 weeks ago, I attended a screening and discussion of the short film Bounty here at First Parish. For those who weren't able to attend, Bounty documents an event in Boston when 3 families of the Penobscot Nation in Maine visited the old State House to read and reflect on the Phipps Proclamation. As Gloria mentioned, this 1755 document is one of 80 government-issued laws that encouraged colonial settlers to hunt, capture, kill, and scalp Indigenous people in exchange for cash and land. Lieutenant Governor Spencer Phipps, who signed the law, was a respected and engaged member of the congregations known today as First Parish in Cambridge and First Church in Cambridge. Documents show that as a result of the Phipps Proclamation alone, 150 Indigenous people were killed. There were probably many more murders that were not documented. So, my friends, what are we, congregants of First Parish, to make of this information? Clearly, we are not responsible for Spencer Phipps's horrific action and the violence against Indigenous people that it unleashed. Molly and Dana, who appears in the film, has said, "We don't want you to feel responsible for the actions of your ancestors. We don't want you to feel guilty about the atrocity of your ancestors. We want you to know about it. And also, We'd like you to dismantle the systems that they created and that you benefit from. That's not a small ask, nor should it be. For me, one thing that the film Bounty lifts up is the open-hearted and clear-eyed humanity of the Penobscot parents and children, young people who came to the old State House to face a devastating truth. They face this truth in community with one another, and through the film, they invite us to be in community with them. My good people, how can we too be open-hearted and clear-eyed about what we are called to do? How can we too be in community with one another and with today's descendants of the victims of Spencer Phipps's proclamation? How can we say, as Matt Meyer encouraged us to do 2 Sundays ago, yes, unimaginably inhuman acts were perpetrated, and together we can figure out how to repair the broken connection with joy in our hearts. The truths we face may make us uncomfortable, and some of the ways to repair the harm done may also make us uncomfortable. But I would like to put forth the radical thought that perhaps discomfort is to be embraced with joy rather than avoided. There is nothing quite so exhilarating as doing, or perhaps having done, something that feels hard. And one of the most uncomfortable things I do on a regular basis is decide how to use my limited time, which I suspect may be one of the things that comes to your minds when you think about yet another call to action. So I ask, what might make us joyfully uncomfortable as individuals and as a community? Would it be uncomfortable to pause or even to forego our traditional celebrations of Thanksgiving on November 28th in order to attend with our families or with other members of First Parish the National Day of Mourning in Plymouth, either in person or online? Might it be uncomfortable to use some of our carefully stewarded endowment to support Indigenous justice causes? Could it be uncomfortable to show up at the State House for all-day committee meetings when the Massachusetts Indigenous legislative agenda embarks on yet another attempt to get its priority bills passed during the next legislative session? And I'd like to add, one of those priority bills is officially naming tomorrow's holiday Indigenous Peoples' Day, which the legislature of Massachusetts has not been able to accomplish in its last 2 legislative sessions. Could you stretch your budget to put more than usual in the offerings in November when we will share the plate with the United American Indians of New England to support the National Day of Mourning? Or could you go to their website to donate? My good people, and I say that with a full heart, we are good. I hope you take from my talk today 3 things. First, let us reflect on what we have heard here today, not just for a day or 2 or 3, but on an ongoing basis. Secondly, let's help others know and remember these things by talking about them widely. And thirdly, let's, as a community, figure out how to begin to repair the harm that Spencer Phipps caused. I hope you will join First Parish's Indigenous Justice Working Group in exploring the joyous possibilities by engaging with the prompts that we have placed on the tables in the parlor. Thank you for being here today.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being here today. Today, we resolve to live into our UU values, not just on Indigenous Peoples Day, but every day. And we ask ourselves, how do we land up in a world centered around love? A world of equity, generosity, a world thriving with interdependence, a world of justice, a world of pluralism. To land in a world centered around love, we must become agents of transformation. As Lois encouraged us, we must find joy in the discomfort of change, joy of each incremental step there. We have to resist and help others to resist self-defeating notions of human nature. Established colonial norms are, yes, a couple centuries old, but they are not a human universal, and these colonial norms can be changed. And this is urgent because in human acts, for those who do not read the newspaper or any social media, are not just in the past. Inhuman acts are being perpetrated in the name of colonialism this very minute. Inhuman acts are still enabled by legal systems and cultural norms hanging on from the colonial era. Inhuman acts are still enabled in Indian country, in cities, heartless acts in cities like our own here in Cambridge, and around the world in places like Palestine. It is sad but true, it is as culturally permissible to overlook state-sponsored slaughter today as it was for our theological ancestors to overlook the state-sponsored slaughter of the Penobscot people. Now, as Unitarian Universalists, the value of equity calls us to reject the notion that only some lives have value. We are called to dismantle systems that benefit some at the expense of others, to support the intrinsic worth and dignity of all people. We must start by revoking the cultural permission to overlook the slaughter of some, and to stop allowing our tax dollars, Kamala Harris, please listen to me, stop allowing our tax dollars to be used for apartheid and ethnic cleansing. But how do we do this? Do we join our college students and shout at them from the sidewalks and the street corners? And, is this a controversial statement? I don't know why it is. Not another bomb. Do we name and shame them, like our abolitionist UU forebear Lydia Maria Child did with her pen? Only today we can shame them, more of them and faster, on social media. Or do we shun them through economic sanctions? Yeah. Like the biblical prophet crying in the wilderness, each of these means of raising awareness has a role. But, and this is where I depart probably from many, let us call people in. Let's not call them out. Let us cry out love. Love. With love, there is enough for all. Now, UUs in the room, please, we must do more than shouting and shaming and shunning and sanctioning. If we want a world centered on love, we must do more than may I talk about love. We must be love. And especially now, winter is coming, and with it, the holiday season. Now, suppose you are rubbing elbows at a holiday party with one of them. And if you are in a workplace or a university, this is likely to happen to you. Or if you are in any kind of a family, chosen or otherwise, you may be sitting at a holiday table with one of them. Now what? You could, at a party, avoid them completely, although you'd have to reckon with Lois later. Now, at a holiday party, or at a holiday table, you could simmer in silence, right? Just keep it to yourself until someone gets triggered or someone says something sarcastic, and then a fight breaks out, and then who knows what's next. Or you could be love, knowing, and this is difficult, knowing that the first loving act is to listen. Just like, when you come into life, right, as a child crying, the first love you experience is people listening to your cries. Now, some of you, no doubt, are with Ta-Nehisi Coates and are totally listening to what another one of them spout the morally indefensible. And you stomp your foot and go off on your high horse, but that is not the kind of listening that I'm referring to. What I'm asking you is to find it in your heart to listen for the suppressed emotions, knowing that anger is the coat that is worn by fear and grief. Now, if you respond to this coat of anger with anger of your own, then you light on fire more anger and you deepen the grief. Yeah, this is how the brain works. You are triggering and doubling down those anger circuits in people. Instead, if you let your love work at the root of the situation by listening with love honors their grief, diminishes their fears, and softens their anger. By lowering their defensiveness, love uproots the word them and cultivates the ground for us to work together. Now, you might ask, okay, how does this apply to me? Now, here's how. For example, if you rallied with us yesterday in Boston for Indigenous Peoples Day, or if you plan to join us at the Indigenous National Day of Mourning, you may hear people shouting, "Land back." And you may imagine that Indigenous people expect all non-Indigenous people to pack up and go home, to go back to England or Sweden or wherever. And then you might get afraid and you might, shrink back a bit. But what if someone listened to your fears and pointed out that your fear of expulsion is actually grounded in the colonial mentality, right? Who actually did the expelling, right? Let's use reason on this. Now, so you have to ask yourself, is that a fear that you really need to respond to? The colonial structures are the mode that we are imagining are a way to outgrow. Lois asked you to be joyful. Gloria asked you for courage. And I am asking you to imagine with joy and courage. I am asking you to imagine land back as a transformation back to a land where sharing was the first value, where all people had value, including the stranger. Remember, when the Europeans landed, the Wampanoag offered the help they desperately needed. Now, imagine getting back to a world where all people are welcome, where all life is valued. In the film Bounty, Penobscot tribal ambassador Molly and Dana gave us a pointer when she said, "They tried to bury us, but they didn't know that we were and are seeds." We are seeds. You friends, Let us be fearless and joyful as we enter community with Indigenous people who grew from these strong seeds, who retain a radical respect for life, one that we as UUs say that we have. Let us lean into the doing. Let us learn, listen, and reflect. Let us imagine rediscovering a world with love at the center. Let us regrow a loving, sharing community. Let us rebuild a world with love enough for all. So may it be.
All of the children